And welcome back to Subculture. Well, we've got a very special guest on the phone right now. If you've been listening to this station for the last few weeks, you've probably heard a brand new show start up called You Can't Comp This. And one of the hosts of that show is Russell. And we thought we would get Russell on the phone today to chat a little bit more about card collecting. Because, of course, we were talking about it on the show a few weeks ago with Kyle and Harley as well. And we're all card collectors, so we thought we would actually get Russell on the phone today to chat a little bit about his brand new show, but also about card collecting in general as well. Welcome to the program, mate.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Now, we probably should be honest and tell our listeners out there, we have known each other for a while. I go in the breaks that you run, of course, so yeah, we should get that out of the way so people know that we do know each other, but
Absolutely. It's who you know, not what you know in life. Like, let's be honest about all of this, mate. Like,
exactly. So, mate, I've realised I've never asked you this question, even though I know that you are a huge card collector. When did card collecting start for you?
I can't exactly remember the day or the year or anything like that, but I do just remember being a kid that used to walk around with cards in his pocket.
Yeah.
And there was a local market near my house, and they used to sell secondhand cards, and then there was also a guy that used to sell sealed packets, and my pocket money was $2 a week, and he also used to sell packets for $2 a week, so it was just the perfect, you know, introduction for cards to me, and I just really enjoyed the whole experience. And I think also, being honest about it, I was just a basketball tragic, so for me this was just another way to enjoy the game or get closer to the game, and so it was just something that really progressed from there. And I think I'm the classic middle-aged 40-year-old guy that collected cards as a kid, went off and got a job, and went to school and did all those types of things, and then came back to it a few years later. And that was a very common sort of theme that emerged, through COVID or post-COVID, if you want to use that phrase. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, has it always been basketball for you? Like, have you ever strayed into Aussie rules or basketball or even pop culture cards at all?
I do have a few different types of cards. I've definitely got footy cards in there. So I grew up in Melbourne, Australia. So if you think about the most popular sport by a mile, that was AFL. But I would probably say that collecting AFL cards was more something that, maybe the phrase that you would use is popular culture. It was just something that was, around me. And I can't even remember where I got them from. They might have even been hand-me-downs from my cousins, or older kids that just didn't want them anymore or something like that. I might have bought a few packets here and there, but I definitely didn't collect them overly. The other ones I've got too is Batman cards. So the
Yes.
original Michael Keaton Batman card set. And actually, the other day I got them out and was having a look at them, and I must have had those in my pockets too, because some of the edges on those cards are frayed and torn and ripped. And actually, in my head, this is a complete side note, I thought I had a complete set of those, and I went through and laid them out into the 9 pockets that you put them in, the Ultra Pro ones.
Yeah.
And maybe, actually, I've got half a set that's missing. So funny, like, when I was a kid, like, those Batman cards seemed, because they were more expensive than basketball cards, I remember that.
Yeah.
They just sort of seemed a little bit out of reach, and I went onto eBay the other day, and you can buy a full set for $50. Like, it's peanuts.
Yeah. Oh, because that's where it all started for me, because I was one of those kids that I just didn't like school, even when I was in primary school. And the only way my mum could get me to do well on spelling tests or maths tests was by saying, I'll buy you a packet of cards for every one of the questions that you get right on your test. So
Wow,
kind
what a
of,
bribe.
yeah, it kind of started with cricket and Aussie rules, and then the pop culture
Yep.
cards, so Turtles, Batman, everything like that, and then basketball. And
Yeah.
and I was going to ask you that, like, do you see these days that there's a lot of young people still in the card collecting kind of hobby now?
So I think, from my perspective, there are definitely kids that are interested in cards, but I'd say the main thing they're collecting is Pokemon. I think that's
Yeah.
the type of card that is the most, A, readily accessible, and probably, I would say, 2, the most affordable. And
Yeah.
there's 2 parts to the affordability. One part is actually buying the packets, and this is to do with inflation, obviously, but I think probably the cheapest packet you could get at the moment, I would say, is between $5 and $7, but on average, you're probably looking around $10 a packet. So, and this is a complete side note again. You've got kids just like me, and we've been talking about pocket money. What's the appropriate amount of pocket money for a kid these days? So I used to get $2. Is it now $10?
Oh, yeah. Well, I reckon even a bit higher. I reckon it's almost up to $20 these days.
Holy moly! You're more generous than me, obviously.
Yeah, well, like, and that's the thing, like, even being able to get nieces and nephews interested in cards and things like that as well, like, yeah, and like you said,
Yeah.
cost is a big thing, these
For
days.
kids
Like,
particularly, yeah.
I was finding some old packets the other day from when I was a kid, and, like, you could go and buy, like, a packet of hoops in those days for, like, $2.99 and stuff
Yeah.
like that. You just can't do that these days.
Definitely not, no. But what I was going to say too about, and why I think Pokemon is, again, more readily accessible, if you go to a trading card shop, they'll have boxes of Pokemon sitting there just to give away, and they're very happy that you take them.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big contrast with basketball in that, yeah, you can definitely pick up cheap cards, but I've not really ever seen boxes of cards just sitting there, ready to be given away. So I think that that's a really interesting maybe dynamic, and taking this back to the 90s, my recollection was it didn't matter where you went to, like the servo, or you went to the post office, or you went to Kmart or whatever, there was always basketball cards sitting around. So I think the next part of this narrative too is that we're currently going through a takeover. So Panini is the current card manufacturer of basketball cards. And after the end of next season, Fanatics is going to be taking over. And one of the things that they've spoken about is making cards more accessible and also doing a lot more marketing. And you can already see the marketing that Fanatics is doing, and also the integration of products into different places. You can sort of see that playing out. So I wonder if Fanatics is going to take a little bit of a leaf out of the Pokemon book and actually try and, get cards to be a lot more accessible to people at a lot more different sort of price points. So
Yeah. Have you
Yeah.
changed how you collect cards as well? Like when you and I were kids, you would go and try and collect an entire set of whether it be like
Yeah.
Stadium Club, Hoops, Flair, whatever. Have you changed
Yeah.
how you collect now because they are so expensive and because there are so many different kinds of basketball cards that come out each year?
Yeah, so I still love set collecting. To take your point, that's 100% accurate. I love set collecting, and that to me is maybe more enjoyable than buying single cards, because you're forced to actually look at plays that you would never normally chase. But I think what my issue is, again, this is going back to price point here, is do you really want to spend $600 or $700 chasing a whole bunch of cards, and then you'll look at them, say, once or twice a year? So what I've probably been doing more now is just chasing base cards and completing the sets that way, because I've done a few sets in parallels, but I've just found that not the return on investment, but just the spend at the end of the day, you could just buy like one, really, really nice card. So I'd probably rather just do that, buy one really nice card and then spend, say, $100 on base cards to complete the set, and I still get the same amount of enjoyment. And I do enjoy the chase, I'll definitely admit that, but
Yeah.
if we are name-dropping resources to complete your set chases, comc.com, they're an amazing website where all of the cards are sent over there, and comc holds all the cards, so then you can buy, let's say, 50 or 100 cards at the same time and get them shipped out all at once. And once that there's, say, 10 or 20 of the cards, the pricing becomes really competitive, and you can make offers on cards until you get one at basically like a bargain price. That's the best way to say it.
Yeah, I laugh at the price of how much they've gone up now, because I can remember my dad yelling at me because we went to a trading card fair when I was a kid, and I bought,
Yeah.
remember the Young Lions set with like Hardaway and O'Neal and all of them, and they had a lion in the background? I paid $30 for a set of those, and I remember my dad went absolutely nuts about me wasting money, so it's like I laugh now at how much the cards have gone up to, and I don't even reckon those cards are worth $30 anymore, so yeah.
You reckon?
Yeah, well, I saw a set recently on eBay going for $10. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Plus inflation, you probably lost about $60, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, mate, I wanted to talk about that, about the different ways you can collect. Like, for me, I collect Australian players and I collect Brooklyn players because they're my teams, like, and I love the Aussie players. But one of the things that came up when we were talking cards last time on the show is people that collect obscurities. And one of the cards that gets mentioned a lot is the Mark Jackson Hoops card. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what makes that card so special, because I clumsily tried to tell everybody about it.
So to answer your question, the reason why that card is so infamous, I think is the better word, is because retrospectively it was just they were discovered incidentally on the card. Like, it wasn't deliberately done.
Yep.
They murdered their parents, went to a Knicks game, had their photograph taken, were then convicted of the killings, and then collectors began to discover that actually they were in the card. So I think where this becomes popular is where it crosses over different lines. So now this card is crossing over into true crime aficionados. Yep. And so I think that's where card collecting in that sense is a little bit interesting, or maybe unique is the right word, because not only are basketball card collectors chasing this card, other people outside of basketball card circles are now coming in to purchase it, to put it into their collection. So the other card that's exactly in this same scenario too is the Donruss Net Marvels. So these cards were literally just base cards, 2 or 3 per box, so not rare really in any type of capacity at all. It also coincided with COVID, so you definitely have to factor that in terms of maybe 50% of the spike was related to that. But people outside of basketball cards were coming in and collecting these cards because of the Marvel movie references that was also exploding, at the same time. So there is definitely a place in that where you can sort of focus on cards and say, are these cards going to be more collectible at some point once other people, catch on to it. So the one that I prospected on was the Jam Masters set, which essentially was a play on words with NBA Jam.
Yep.
And that was the one that definitely did not take off, and I don't think it ever will. So now I've basically got a couple of hundreds of those just sitting in a box at home.
Oh, wow. I've had a few as well. I've had people ring and write and ask me about various footballers and stuff over the years that they've got themselves in trouble. And a guy wrote to me recently and said that, did I have any Ben Cousins cards? And I said, well, yeah, like, there's plenty of Ben Cousins cards. What are you looking for? And he's like, oh, I collect sports people that have been arrested. So, like, whether it be soccer, basketball, NFL, AFL, cricket, whatever, he collects cards of guys that have been arrested. So, yeah, interesting collection.
So I would put that down as a true crime thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
So I would be guessing he would also be interested in that Mark Jackson card. That's exactly the type of person that is interested in those cards. Yeah. The other one that's also from a pop culture standpoint is the Ja Morant Young Dolph card.
Yes.
In that, again, just a coincidental picture of Ja Morant with this rapper in the background. I'm really showing my age now. I don't even know who this guy is. And it basically went from a $5 card to a $120 card after his death. So it's one of those things. You don't really know, when these cards are going to explode. But I'd also say too, I don't see value in those cards. So the people that are spending more than $5 on the Mark Jackson card or more than $5 on the Ja Morant Young Dolph card.
Yep.
Like, to me, there's no logic to that. And I think you're better off taking that money and spending it onto like a numbered rookie card or an autograph card or even a really nice veteran flawless patch you could get for that price. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, the Will Smith card, I think it was a Skybox card from the 90s, if I remember correctly, but there was a whole bunch of actors that were into basketball, and Will Smith was one of them. Well, that card exploded when he did the Chris Rock slap at the Oscars.
Yeah, right.
I had a bunch of people suddenly writing to me going, do you have the Will Smith card? It's like...
Yeah, right.
What, so you get cancelled and then suddenly people want your card? It's like, it's so weird. So, but bringing it back to what you're doing now, Russell, your show. Tell us a little bit about your show. When did that idea start for you to do a podcast about collecting? Because you've got one of the best podcasts out there when it comes to card collecting. Because you guys are so natural and such experts on what you're talking about. Where did that idea come from?
You're too kind to me. Thank you for the compliment. I really do appreciate the kind words. So actually, just to clarify, we are new to the Central Coast Radio Network. That's 100% true. But actually, we've done 140 episodes. And this is my second podcast. So I was actually invited onto another Australian podcast, which was called Card School. And so I did around 20 or 25 episodes on that, which I think was a really good learning opportunity for me. And also just to show, how the logistics happen behind the scenes, because I had no idea how to do the editing or the uploading and all that type of stuff. And so when that show finished, I still wanted to keep making content, and I'd met Adam doing something else. So basically we got together and did it. And I'd say that my principles behind the show is that I find the mainstream media, let's just use ESPN as an example, just a little bit frustrating, because they're really good at what they do, and this is not a critique, but I find it a little bit fatiguing when they're constantly just yelling at each other and creating headlines and saying things to be controversial to basically get a reaction. And look, they're amazing at what they do in terms of getting clicks and getting visibility across platforms, which is something we haven't been able to master. I'll admit that freely, but we like to look at the non-mainstream teams. So, for example, we'll spend time talking about the Toronto Raptors, or we'll spend time talking about the Orlando Magic, or the Cavaliers, which this week is going to get a really good run on the show. I think we should definitely talk about the Cavs. They've just beaten Boston today, which is a huge upset in Boston.
Yeah.
So, and I'd also like to focus our content making on education. So, and I don't mean you should do this and you should do that, but we more take it as thought bubbles. So have you considered this, and have you looked at this, and instead of purchasing this, why don't you take some time and, work through this? So, and personally, if you're asking me how do I write the content for the show, actually, it's just things that I think about each week. So if I'm walking down the street and I'm thinking about basketball cards, then I literally just write that into a notepad. And then at night, if I'm lying in bed, I'm thinking about something, I just write it down then. So it's literally just, things that come to my mind that I want to investigate further or look into more, and that's it. And we just talk about it, and it's really not, I'm trying to keep it as simple as I can here. It's not complicated what we do. It's just something very enjoyable. That's the best way. Yeah.
Yeah. So to give our listeners a little bit of a sample of Russell's knowledge, I'm going to throw a question at him right now. As a Brooklyn fan, have I got years of pain ahead of me?
Years of pain. So it depends what you define as pain. How did you enjoy the last season? I'm going to put this back to you a little bit.
Look, I've been kind of excited because I think we do have some young kids coming through. I think we did. Yeah. We wasted a lot, I think, when we went after Durant and people like that I don't think they ever had their heart and soul at Brooklyn. But look, I am kind of excited about the kids that we've got coming through, and I hope that the coach that we've got this time will give those kids a run.
Yeah, okay. So just to move forward from that point, I actually think you've retooled really well. Because if you think about the progression of this team, you were bought out by a Russian oil trillionaire, and the general consensus or the joke around the NBA is that a new owner comes in and they want to win straight away. They want to win today.
Yep.
And he fit into that stereotypical mold to an absolute T. Traded away every single future draft pick, every young player. If my memory serves me correct, he traded away the draft pick that became Damian Lillard.
Yep.
And he traded it for Gerald Wallace on basically like a 12-month loan. So, I think if you summarize their initial interest into the NBA, I think that's where you start, isn't it? Then they acquired KG and Paul Pierce, and again they gave away assets that became Markel Fultz that became Jason Tatum.
Yep.
So let's use that as the starting point. Then the team is completely capped out. They've got no future draft picks, and I thought they retooled really well. They picked up players that were undervalued by other teams and teams needed to move along, and they also picked up future assets as part of that, which is a little bit of the OKC model that happened in the last 5 years, basically trading cap space for assets. And so then they cleared enough cap space to get Kyrie, KD, and James Harden all at the same time, which when you say it like that is quite amazing.
It was crazy, and I think we all thought championship rings at that stage.
Yeah, me too. And if you're asking me, I picked them as the championship winner when they were all together. And frankly, in my opinion, they underperformed and they should have done better. But now you're sort of looking back on that. James Harden was never really in the right space. And frankly, neither was Kyrie, because the way that Kyrie's playing at the moment, if you had that Kyrie in Brooklyn, you would have gone 1 or 2 rounds further, I actually think.
Yeah, well, I read a crazy stat the other day that they only ever played 24 games together.
Yeah.
So, yeah that didn't help.
So the Kevin Durant trade to the Phoenix Suns is the next part of this conversation. And so I think what they learned from the previous scenario was that you need to get future assets back. And they did a really good job of basically cleaning out the Suns for the next couple of years. So I think in a really long-winded way, I think this is where your optimism has to come from, because you've got a lot of future assets coming back from the Suns. And if we can be honest, the Suns aren't looking fantastic, and now they're going to be a year older next year. That Bradley Beal contract that the Suns have got is unmovable. He'll be stuck there in perpetuity. There's no other team that can take that contract on. Durant's a year older. Booker is entering his prime. And I think that's the really tricky part if you're a Suns fan. Like, where do you go from here? You're completely capped out. You've got no future assets. So taking it back to the Nets, I actually think you've done really well. I think Cam Johnson is a really good prospect. I think Bridges is an all-star potential player. Plus, you've got all these assets coming in from the Suns. So, in my opinion, it's a very exciting time.
Yeah.
But I'd also put that with an asterisk in that exciting means that you'll have a good young team to watch who will play both ends of the court. You might make the playoffs. You'll most likely be a first-round exit. And it's unlikely that you'll be competing for a championship in the next 5 years. But
yeah,
I think there's other franchises that are in a much worse place. And you could argue the Suns are in a worse place. The Washington Wizards are an absolute shambles. The Atlanta Hawks are looking rudderless, I think is the best way to describe that team. Whereas at least the Nets have got some direction to move forward into.
Yeah, I've been stocking up on, bringing it back to cards, I've been stocking up on Whitehead and Clowney rookie cards, because I actually think that they're going to take a big step next year, and hopefully that will be the future for us.
Who do you think will be out of the rotation if Clowney moves in? So when I'm looking at prospecting cards, that's what I look at. So ESPN depth charts is a really good tool for that, because if you're assuming that Clowney's going to get more time, I think that also means that someone's going to be traded.
Yeah, I'm expecting. I really think that the new coach, he's already used the word dead wood, which I found to be interesting with some of our players. So I reckon he will.
So the dead wood is Schroeder and Ben Simmons, right? But no one's taking Simmons.
Nah, I think
unless you buy him out.
I think Simmons will probably sit out most of next year with injury. I don't anticipate that he's going to be back full time. I think Schroeder will go. I think they're already talking trades for him. So, yeah. But, I think it is going to be interesting. How do we fit all of those young kids onto the court at the same time? But I've just really been impressed with Clowney at the later stages of this year when he finally got a chance. So, yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. Great little tip there.
Definitely. All right. So, mate, we probably should wrap up. But if our listeners do want to tune into your show, what is your premiere time on the station so that they can tune in each week?
So it's Thursdays 10 a.m. till 12,
Melbourne
or Sydney time. And if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast, we're on all the different platforms. You Can't Comp This NBA Trading Card Show, but generally if you search for You Can't Comp This, it'll come up in the first couple of hits in there too.
Awesome. Well, mate, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today. Absolute honour having you on the show, and maybe we'll have to
Thank you for having me.
Maybe we'll have to bring you back from time to time just to talk about what's happening in the card collecting world as well, because now we know so many of our listeners are card collectors.
Yeah, right. Definitely some crossover potential there.